Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating our own fully rendered campaign complete with custom Domain of Dread in real time. I'm RJ Kerr, your host as always, and tonight, for our our shorter version of this, since Wednesdays we do 30 minutes and Mondays we do an hour, I figured tonight we would take a break from what we were working on Monday. And instead of focusing on building out some of the clues that we were working on, that we might instead build in some of the complications that could ensue while our characters are searching for information. If you're joining us for the first time, let me back up and give you a little bit of a summary of what we're working on here so that this isn't completely foreign. Uh, so we've created we're in the process of creating a campaign set in a custom domain of dread that takes place in and around an inland sea. We've already done some work in creating the first town in which the characters will appear, a place that we're calling Darkport. We've built the first adventure where they are kidnapped. The characters are kidnapped and briefly enslaved, and then have to escape from their kidnappers and learn about the existence of an artifact that, while hidden, gives currently lost and hidden, it would give the possessor control over the domain of dread. And in the initial stages of this adventure, the characters are led to believe that this is their best option for escaping. They'll come to find out that it's actually more powerful than that later on. But right now, we are working on the portion of our campaign where the characters have escaped their captors uh, and are now attempting to find this artifact on their own. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. We were spending Monday working on some of the clues and some of the leads that the characters could follow to find this artifact. We're using for this a 5 node mystery structure um, where effectively, if you're, it's easier to show graphically, and I just don't have a good graphic for it at the moment, not at my fingertips. But effectively, it's a very organic sort of structure where there's a series of investigative scenes that our characters can go explore and check out, and then each scene has at least 3 clues that lead to the other nodes. And so it allows a lot of player agency, the ability for our characters to really kind of make their own choices as to how they want to investigate this, but still gives us a definable structure that we can use to build out this mystery so we're not having to just kind of make stuff up on the spot when we're playing it. King of Clover says, hello, hello. Good to have you here. Good to have everybody here. And this is probably a good time to mention that this is an interactive stream. So if you have got your own comments, questions, thoughts as we go through and we're building this stuff out, I would love to hear them. I get some of my best ideas. Well, I should say I get some of the best ideas. I won't claim them as my best ideas, but some of the best ideas working with you all here in the chat. So thanks for joining tonight. And I look forward to brainstorming with you and coming up with some cool ideas. So, like I was saying, we were building out this 5 node structure where we spent some time coming up with our first set of investigative scenes. Our initial primary scene, where our characters kind of get the initial information, their first set of leads that they can investigate, and then our secondary scenes where they kind of follow up on those clues and can find other clues that lead them on to tertiary scenes, which you'll notice more than 5 nodes, but it's the same kind of idea. 5 nodes, but it's the same kind of idea. Um, and so we came up with some cool ideas for places for them to investigate, and started with that. But today, I think we're going to put a pin in this, and I think we're going to work on some complications. Um, because what good is an adventure if everything goes to plan, right? And since this is a really organic sort of place in the campaign where we're not really sure where the characters are going to investigate first and what order they're going to do things in and what clues they'll even find. Uh, we're going to come up with some sort of floating challenges that they can face as they go through their investigation. Now, uh, let's go ahead and start typing out some of these here just to kind of brainstorm some challenges. Let's make a good brainstorming page as we always do. And let's see here. And this is what search brainstorming. Cool. So here we're brainstorming floating challenges that might oppose the characters, or the PCs we'll use in this case, while they conduct their investigations into the location of the artifact that will eventually give them the power to escape. Um, so, um, again, if you're new here, let's do we're going to do the brainstorming the way I always do brainstorming here, and that's where we're going to kind of free write and free associate and kind of come up with stuff as we go. Because this is sort of untilled territory for us. We haven't really done much in this vein yet. So let's start from fresh and start from scratch here. Now, that being said, we have some things to work with. We already, if you've been following along, you know that we have some, or if you've been watching the various videos each week, you know that we've already developed some factions that exist within this world, two in particular that could immediately come into play. One is an Aboleth-led faction, and the other is a Slotty-led faction. We already know that the Aboleth-led faction is searching for the artifact themselves because they were the kidnappers in our first adventure. So they're an immediate sort of idea here where we have potentially we have agents from the Aboleth-led faction that attempt to intercept and recapture the PCs. So that's one possibility. That's a pretty obvious one. I frequently try to get the obvious stuff kind of out of the way, and then dig a little deeper into the stuff that's a little less, well, on the nose. So we've got that. We know that the Slotty faction is working against the Aboleth faction because they help our characters escape in the beginning of our first adventure here. And so we have them kind of queued up to be something along the lines of allies, but let's be honest, it's a Slod-led faction. They're not allies. They're chaos of their own making. So we should probably have some sort of trouble that comes from them as well. So let's see. Let's say the Slod. Let's do a return here. The Slotty-led faction should come into play. They are agents of chaos, as all Slotty are. As such, they should bring a certain amount of turmoil, I think, into the adventure, which we've kind of set them up to be. So if we've set them up so that they appear friendly to some extent in the beginning here, then when they are not friendly, when they begin working against the character's interests, they feel a little more chaotic, a little less refined in their agendas. So I think we need some, not just some cultists, but some slod that come after the characters. Of course, we're going to want to balance this for the level that they're at, but right now we're just kind of brainstorming and coming up with ideas. So no need to get too much into the weeds just yet, because we can always adjust challenge ratings as needed. So let's say there should be some slotty that come into play, searching for characters, perhaps wanting something from them. What might they want? Do they seek violence for violence sake? Maybe. I'm not sure that's as entertaining. Um, what do you all think? What would a group of slotty, so slot are red, blue, green, gray, death slots, what would they be looking for from our party? Our characters who are out and about investigating, trying to find this artifact, are the slotty looking for it for themselves? Are they just trying to get in the way? Are they just looking to uh, add a little anarchy, as it were, to the proceedings? What are your thoughts? This is a good opportunity for you guys to jump in if you've got some things that the slot might be looking for. In the meantime, I'll say, oh, it looks like we already got an answer. King of Clovers. Maybe when the Aboleth agent sees a slotty, they stop what they're doing and fight them. Yeah, so we could have certainly some conflict between them. Um, I think we definitely need to have some of that. There is some overt conflict between Aboleth and slotty factions. Turmoil that, well, let's say conflict that could boil over and embroil the characters during their investigations. So, yeah, so kind of like that, where perhaps complication here isn't something that's directly focused on the characters themselves, but a situation that kind of becomes volatile while the characters are there, sort of outside themselves. That's a neat idea. I like that. Um, let's see here. Jonathan says, "Have you determined the level range overall, and specifically what levels the characters would be after they escape the Aboleth?" Goes on to say, "I see the slutty goals being twofold. They want out of Demiplane, and they want to foil the Aboleth faction. Those make sense to me as overall goals. Um, to that end, I have not necessarily formalized in my brain where what level everyone will be during this investigation. As soon as they get out of the initial adventure, I would say that they level up. So the initial adventures for level one characters, I think, is what we started with there. What we balanced for there. Let me check. I'm pretty sure it is. Let me check. Yeah, four first level characters. And so I mean, I wouldn't keep them first level beyond that adventure. So leveling up to second level. Now, admittedly, I typically don't do um, XP leveling up in my adventures, in my campaigns. Entirely up to you if you do. I just find that tends to be a little more chaotic than I like it to be. I tend to go with milestone, but there are certainly other ways that you could approach that if you were to do this yourself. Um, Jonathan says, so we're looking at, at CR2 essentially. Yeah, we're looking at CR2 if we want this to be balanced fight. Um, but if we're coming up with complications, they don't always have to be combat necessarily here. And so we could do one that forces our characters to run, to hide, to garner allies, to think of creative ways out of the situation. So we don't have to be as strict with this. And additionally, since we don't know what order their investigation is going to be in, in my mind, they're probably going to level up at some point during this investigation. Low level characters tend to level up relatively quickly. We don't necessarily want that to drag out too long. Um, so that you kind of want there to be kind of a logarithmic gap between leveling up, which is easy to do if you're doing an XP based kind of thing, which is one argument for doing XP based. It's a little more difficult when you're doing some of the milestone stuff or some of the milestone advancement, because you kind of linking those to story objectives, and so you kind of get some flex in the time frame there. But the way that I would kind of view this is that they level up after the first adventure, and then they'll probably level up, um, as they achieve some level of knowledge during the go here, maybe while they are, once they kind of get out of their secondary scenes, perhaps, maybe once they're in the tertiary, they level up. But again, it's hard to kind of predict that because they might kind of zip right through and jump around. So we may decide that instead they level up at the end of the investigation once they find the location, the artifact. That's a nice concrete point. So we might do that. Um, so it's something to consider while we're building this out for sure, is to kind of think through how we want our level structure to be. King Clover says, "What if the Slotty is an extension of the artifact's power and they can be used to trace back to the artifact?" Ooh, okay. Yeah, maybe maybe the control gems, which within our Slotty are linked to the artifact in some way. So perhaps um, they're using that of kind of their own connection to try to find it in rough rudimentary terms, kind of like divining rods. That's an interesting idea, and it's a cool way to tie in a conflict to a clue, um, and to have some spare clues that we have in some of these conflict encounters here lying about, in case our characters get lost and need a little bit of a pointer. I like that idea. I really do. Good one. Jonathan Frost says you could structure the leveling based on the number of clues they gain in their investigation, in a combination of 2 to 3 clues, for example. Yeah, absolutely, you could do that, and that might be a good way to handle that, um, if we're trying to make sure they level up partway through. Um, I Part of the reason I'm leaning towards them leveling up partway through is that we've talked about having some dungeons built into some of this investigation, right? Um, we talked about on Monday uh, that they go find this treasure hunter who's got some information about the location of this artifact, and that the treasure hunter is in an active dungeon kind of environment when they find them. And so we've got more than just a series of interviews in here. There's some actual some challenge built into a lot of this stuff, um, to where they need to go and what they need to accomplish already. Um, so that's kind of why I'm leaning towards them leveling up partway through here as opposed to leveling up at the end. Because it just feels like a lot for second level characters to get through if they go through the whole thing before they level up. So I like that solution, Jonathan, of a combination of clues and the level up and how they're leveling up. Let's make a note of that here. Um, I will say that when I'm kind of writing adventures for myself, I'll just make rough notes about where I think the characters level up. And sometimes I'll flex that a little bit, just kind of depending on how much effort they put into things. If they kind of zip through stuff, maybe I push it back a little bit. If they really struggle and they really put in a lot of time and effort into something, I might level them up a little bit faster. Um, but if I was going to be publishing this, um, then there would be a section at the beginning of the adventure where I would kind of write out how leveling goes throughout this and where characters should level up throughout the adventure, and detail it out. But let's make just a note to ourselves. So let's say characters level up after uncovering any, we'll say 3 investigative scenes. So it's not necessarily linked to the clues per se, um, because there's 3 clues per scene here. But you know, they unlock, they follow clues to any 3 of these, and then they can level up once they've kind of cleared them here. Um, so I like that daisy chain structure there, Jonathan. I think that's a good idea. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's get Grammarly out of the way there. Cool. All right. So back to our brainstorming here. We mentioned kind of the slot um, goals. There's 2 here that I agree with the ones that Jonathan came up with here, that they want out of the demiplane because they want to spread their chaos, and they want to foil the Aboleth faction because, you know, why work together when you can oppose? It's far more chaotic that way, right? Um, the other thing that I think I want to add to that, um, is that, you know, Slod are the embodiment of chaos. They come from Limbo, right? The embodiment of chaos. If we're using some of the D&D lore for this, and so I think they want to spread some of that chaos around too, wherever they are. Like they can't help themselves, and kind of you know, mucking about with the status quo. So let's delineate some of their goals here so we can keep those in mind, um, and we can use that to kind of build out some of the challenges that we might face here, because, you know, Slaughter are going to be a high level encounter for characters, for some of these characters at this level here, and so we don't want it to be a fight, we want it to be something else. um, let's see here. King Clover says, you said the adventure location was a wizard tower, correct? Maybe the wizard used to work for the Aboleth. Yeah, well, one of the locations is. So right now, we've got a number of locations because our characters are going through an investigation. They're hunting down clues that exist all over this domain of dread to find the location of this lost artifact. And so um, we've got the home of of an old salt, who's an old storyteller, who's got a long memory, and so that's kind of our most probably mundane place. We have a dungeon environment where there's a treasure hunter who's actively looking for the artifact themselves. Um, we've got an atoll, growing out of a shallow reef where a siren lives, who has information, clues hidden inside a sea shanty that the characters will have heard. We've got a castle structure made out of ghost ships, so you know, old shipwrecks and that kind of deal. That's now a Sahuagin stronghold. We have the Wizard's Tower, which is grown out of an enormous pillar of salt in a shallow lagoon, and then we have a moving isle, so a shrine to our elemental villain Ovander. Um, Set in the back of an enormous dragon turtle that moves throughout the inland sea. And so we can certainly come up with um, uh, conflicts. We're going to come up with conflicts for all of these. There are going to be some inherent conflict for every investigative scene, because the game would be boring if we didn't have conflict. Let's be honest. Um, but I also want to come up with some floating challenges that we can throw at the characters in between these things, and make the road between between each of these physical locations a little more fraught with peril. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking here, is stuff where we can have kind of grab bag of encounters that we can kind of toss out when things are just kind of you know, a little too smooth sailing. Um, that being said, King Clovers, I like there being a connection between the wizard and the aboleth of in some capacity. So let's make a note on that here, because that can add to some of the conflict here when they go to see this wizard. Um, the wizard has a, we're going to say, hidden link to the aboleth, and we'll define what that link is later. Um, but we'll say hidden because we don't want the characters necessarily to know when they get there. We want this to be a surprise kind of conflict this generates here. So maybe we have something where the aboleth, where since the wizard is perhaps getting insight and information from this aboleth out in the world, gaining power from them. Maybe they're even dabbling in some warlock like occult rituals to gain power from this aboleth. Um, and so maybe when the characters come here, the wizard tries to keep them delayed and detained long enough to for the aboleth's forces to arrive. So there might be a good marriage here between some of our floating challenges and one of the inherent conflicts in one of our investigative scenes here. Um, cool. And I know that we're doing a lot of jumping around here. You'll find if you've been watching my stuff, I tend to jump around a lot as things connect because this is, adventures are a living thing in a lot of ways, I think. As ideas strike you, you want to move around and capture them as we go. So, that being said, I have mentioned that I want to capture some of the Slotty led faction goals. And so let's get that down here. So they want out of the demi plane, and we've defined some of their goals in other places here, but let's define them for what they want in terms of immediately mucking around with the characters. They want out of the demi plane, which is to say they want the artifact for themselves. They want to oppose the aboleth, oppose all progress from the aboleth-led faction. And we're going to have to come up with names for these factions at some point here. They want to spread chaos. Would be the three things that they want. So part of the reason, like I said, that I want to identify what these are is to kind of keep us on track here, because I don't think throwing Slod at the characters of this level is going to be a fair fight. And so I don't want some of these to be intrinsic fights necessarily. So having some of their goals gives us other tools that we can use. For example, we might spread some disinformation through, through various lies and what have you. King Clover says, and to transform humanoids, of course. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's kind of part of. I imagine I encapsulate that as part of the spread of chaos. But let's make a sub note here. Let's spread tadpoles and the phage. Cool. Let's see. I just want to capture, let's see here, the Slotty faction might spread disinformation to lure characters into traps where they can be captured and infected, perhaps. That could be a cool thing, where it's a combat encounter, except that it's not to the death. They're just trying to be captured and they get infected, and then the characters have to find, amid their investigation, have to come up with ways to cure themselves from this. That could be an additional little hiccup, add some complications to this. That could be cool. All right. Wow, we really got on a roll here, didn't we? And that 30 minutes has kind of flown by. So why don't we go ahead and take this opportunity to wrap up for the evening here. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me tonight. You guys come up with some great ideas. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, King Clovers. Thanks for being in the chat here with us, and uh, and really giving this some flavor and some life. It really means a lot to me. Oh, looks like we get a couple closing remarks here. So let's say King of Clovers, maybe they secretly have connection to another faction who gives them something if they remain neutral to each other, perhaps. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. We've definitely got some other factions that we need to build out here in Darkport. Jonathan Frost says a really interesting undertone to the investigation is having the PCs learn that any major NPCs or anyone seemingly powerful enough to be able to exist here has had some influence from either faction. Yeah, really kind of learning that there's some puppet mastery strings going on here in the background. Yeah, all that kind of adding layers to this, I think, adds a lot of depth. And it makes it easy for us as DMs to add a lot of depth in here without having to do a whole lot of additional work, just by kind of making these connection points as we go through. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you have enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff really helps the channel grow and helps encourage me to do more of this. I get a lot of energy from you guys, so thank you for sharing that with me. And if you want to keep up with this series as we go, we're going to be back on Monday. So that'll be 6 p.m. Central Time, our usual time if you're in the US here. And on Mondays, we work for about an hour on this. And then we'll be back again on the following Wednesday as well, where we'll pick up again with another little short sprint on this. So thanks again, and I will see you all next time.